Hello folks and welcome. So Linux Mint 21.2 Cinnamon. Actually, you can also use this video on the Xfce desktop. I'm pretty sure the tool is identical. I'm going to be talking about printers today. I had a request from a subscriber about installing printers. There may be some difficulty installing a printer or getting it to work. I will show you what I use and I'll talk about the reasons why I use them. And I'll also give you some tips on what to look for if you're going to download a driver from a particular website of your manufacturer. And what kind of driver, because not all Linux drivers are the same. In either case, folks, I will say welcome. If you're brand new to Mint, a special welcome to you. I do encourage that you subscribe. I have lots of material on my YouTube site, over 200 videos. So with that said, I'm going to continue and close the welcome screen. Alt and F4. So printer settings, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can go to your Mint menu and type in PRI and get to the printer settings. You can open up your system settings this way or right click on your panel bar. And again, if you're brand new to Linux Mint, this is the panel bar. Right click, system settings. Go to the hardware section. In the second row is your printer icon. In here is a single click to open that. So let me close the primary box. All right, first of all, let me tell you what I'm filming and then I'm going to continue. So my display is set for 1920 by 1080. I could film in 4K, but I'm not. It'll actually make them smaller unless I use a 200% scaling. So I'm just using standard mode today. So what is this box called? This is called the system-config-printer, and that's the version. It's a cups configuration tool. And you're probably going, a cups, okay. Is that a cup of tea? Is it a cup of coffee? Well, okay, humor aside, it stands for Common Unix Printing System. Linux is a Unix-based system. So is Mac. Microsoft, not so much. All right, with that said, I am going to close this cup of tea. No, just kidding. And I'll talk about the two printers that I have installed. And both of them are actually Brother printers. So this one actually says Brother on it. It's an HL3170 CDW. And this one is a QL5-570. It's a label printer only. That's all it prints is labels. This over here is a laser printer, color laser printer. It does black and white, but it also does color. I didn't install it, the system did. It's auto-discovered. So let me first get this out of the way. I'll talk about why I'm using the printers and then I'll talk about printers in general. The reason I use Brother products is because they work. They not only work on Linux, but also on Microsoft Windows and Mac and mobile devices like iPhones. My network printer is not physically connected to this machine. It is literally on my wireless network. So basically my system goes out and looks for that. It auto-discovered it. It set up its own, well, they're kind of like, if you want to call it driverless, but it set it up for me nonetheless so I can print from it. And it made it a default because I didn't currently have that one installed. This one I manually installed. This one is installed on a USB cable. It's still made by Brother though, but it's connected to a USB cable. Unlike this one, it's connected to my network. Okay, now why do I use Brother products? Well, for the first reason I just told you, it works with everything, and it just keeps working. The other reason that I use them is because the consumables are cheap, fairly cheap. I'm talking about toner cartridges, ink cartridges, because I have a third printer which is not being displayed. It's an inkjet. I hardly ever use it, but it has a scanner on it. But I could also use that one, and it's also a Brother. All right, I use my laser more often because it's just sitting there, and I like the color. And I like the nice and sharpness versus the inkjet. And this one's just a dedicated label printer. This one can do labels also, because it has, well, it's got different bays that I can actually, do manual labels if I want to. And I'm going to talk about the driver for this, because I actually went to the actual manufacturer and downloaded the driver. Now, Linux Mint actually found a driver for this QL570. However, it didn't print right. It gave me a red light when it printed. That's because my label stock was incorrectly set, and I couldn't pick the right label stock with the current printer provided. So I went to the manufacturer's website and downloaded the proper driver, and then it worked just fine. And I'll cover that in this video. Okay, I'll walk through the rest of this interface in a second. Now I'm going to have a discussion. So printers in general have, well, they're made by a lot of different companies. And with that said, a lot of companies don't provide Linux drivers, but a lot of them do. But a lot of times you need to find out which driver to download. I'm going to show you the example by going to Brother and to let you see what they have for my little label printer, because that's what I actually used. I actually dumped the driver and then I reinstalled the printer just for this video, just to make sure that the drivers they currently have are up to date, and they are. All right, with that said, you have a printer. It may not be a Brother printer. It may be some other manufacturer. So you may need to go to your respective websites for your printer and see if they have a Linux driver. So if they do, you may be looking for something that looks like this. So I'm going to blow this up if you don't mind. I'm holding down the control key and scrolling forward with my computer mouse. I have shown all these kind of tips on my YouTube site with different videos on how to do this in your web browser. But more importantly, that's what the thing looks like. And again, it's a roll in here, and it just spits out and auto cuts. Now, I have a Windows, I have a Mac, and I have a Linux. Well, obviously, I'm connecting this to a Linux. But I want you to notice that it has a different selection for which Linux do you have. So I'll back this up where the OK key is here. So I have a selection for Linux --deb or Linux --RPM. Is that rounds per minute? No. That stands for Red Hat Package Management. In other words, for Red Hat type of systems. So what's Deb stands for? Is that her name? Is that Debbie's name? No. Debian based. So Linux Mint is Debian based. So you'd want that one. So if you're on whatever website that you're trying to download a driver on your printer, if they have the selection for Debian, pick that. And click OK. Now if you don't mind, I'm going to zoom back in a little bit to make this smaller, just to let you see what I have listed here. So I have an LPR printer driver, Deb package, because remember, Linux Mint is Debian based. And I have a CUPS wrapper. What was CUPS again? Common Unix Printing System. This one should suffice. There's also the source code, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. And then I have another one here called PTouch Templates for Linux Office applications. You may be interested in that one if you're using something like this. And I downloaded that to let you see what it looks like. But I also downloaded the driver, this one. So when I clicked on it, it gave me an option of English or English China. I chose this one. And then after the download, it looked like this. All right, there's my download section. And that's the driver. It says Deb on it. And you just double click it and follow the instructions. It's all point and click. You don't have to punch in any codes. All right, and it installs itself. It doesn't do anything else when it gets finished. And when you're installing drivers on Mint, it'll install and then it'll say, same driver installed. That's pretty common. Just close the box and you're done. So this other file here is that templates that I told you about. This part here. These templates. This is what this file is. And when I uncompressed it, it looks like that. And these are just the label sizes. And I'll just pick on the 54 millimeter for a second. This is an ODS and ODT files. Your LibreOffice, I'm going to open this for a second, and do a save as and let you see the format. So that's in standard ODT formats. So these are just templates, okay? But we're going to focus in on drivers. So that's basically a quick Debian-based driver installer. And that's what I used to fix my label stock. So I could go into my right-click, System Settings, Printers, and I'll close this and make this a little bit bigger for you. So I went in here under Printer Options, and I was able to select the proper. I didn't have the 29 by 90 earlier with a standard driver that came with Mint. But after I updated the driver, it corrected the stock, which allowed me to print properly. There are other options in here, but I was more I was looking for this size label to make. I knew the problem already, because when it's blinking red on these printers, it's normally the paper stock is not right. All right, with that said, let's continue with the tools. So I'll start again over here. So again, it's a Common Unix Printing System is what that stands for. You have a little troubleshooting thing here. You have View. You have Printer Properties, as long as one is highlighted. So if you have nothing highlighted, nothing's lit up other than View Print Queue. So highlight the printer, then hit the properties this way, or you can just double click. Okay. Then you have duplicate, rename, and of course delete. In case the driver didn't work and you want to start from scratch, just delete it. Enabled, probably be a good idea to make sure it's enabled. Shared, that's your choice. Set as default is another choice. So am I stuck with a laser printer being my default? No. I can make this one as a default. I'll just have to acknowledge all that. And put in my password. Just keep that in mind. Some things that require passwords. And some things not so much. But in either case, I will do this properly. All right, now I got the green check mark. Now, where does this come in handy? All right, as I pointed out, you have an Office suite called LibreOffice Writer or whatever you have installed. So I'll just type in test. Hopefully that's big enough for you. That's as big as I can go. All right, so this is normally what it looks like, somewhere in that vicinity. Okay, but I'm just blowing up the text. I'm holding down my control key while scrolling. I've shown a lot of these tips on my YouTube site before. And again, I highly encourage that you subscribe to watch those tips. All right, so to print anything, we can go to the File menu and hit Print, right? Click. Also, I want you to notice the keyboard shortcut, Control P. That is the same shortcut in Microsoft Windows also, Control P, for your Microsoft dual boot users. If you have a Mac system, you substitute the Control key with your Mac key. Kind of looks like that funny four-sided squiggly thing. And you hit that key and the P. That produces print. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Control key and hit P. And under general conditions, your default printer is what comes up first. Oh, sure, you can change and go to that. Or even print to file. But more importantly, the default printer. And the other options. All right, I'm going to use Alt and F4 to close and do not save, if you don't mind. Actually, I am going to try that one more time and say do not save. There you go. It didn't like the fact because I typed something. All right, so however many printers you have, one needs to have a green check mark. So I usually have my laser for that. I print rarely to this one, but I do occasionally. All right, so we have, starting over here, where did I leave off? Properties and enabled and shared. And then we have print queue. If you got something stuck in the queue, you may want to take a look at that. Either delete it and retry your print. Maybe the thing is not powered up. Maybe it's, if it's a USB connected printer, maybe it's offline. Maybe there's something going on with the printer, like a jam or something. You may want to go take a look at that. But in either case, print queue. All right, so that was also Control F. So server connects. CUPS again is common Unix printing system. And then settings. There's also advanced settings. Most people don't mess with those. And then of course add. So this Brother QL 570 is a USB connected printer. I'm going to click on networked. This is this printer right here. You can see it's driverless. But it is using CUPS. Common Unix printing system. Sometimes you'll see two different drivers. But in either case, when you're dealing with network printers, which are my favorite, I can print from not only this Linux machine, but others, and also Microsoft Windows, Mac, and smartphones like my iPhones. The printer can be anywhere because it's wireless. Just it has to be on my network somewhere. The nice thing about it is, again, you don't have a physical cable. They just continuously work, in my book, at least this printer does, and it goes to sleep after it prints. So it conserves power. I can physically turn it off also. But just keep in mind, if you're using network printers versus wired printers like USB, the printing sometimes takes up to 10 seconds or so because it's got to travel from your machine via wireless over to your router, and then your router has to send it to the printer and maybe format it too if you're doing word processing, for instance. So that stuff takes sometimes 10 seconds to maybe 15, depending on the speed of your network and how busy it is. But you know, if your family is streaming a lot of movies, they may take about 20 seconds or more. But in either case, I just wanted to make sure that you understand that network printers, they don't instantaneously print. They take a second or two after you send. All right, these are a little bit quicker because it's physically connected to the computer. So one more time, when you plug in a USB-based printer, it will more likely try to find a printer for you. Linux Mint will try to find a printer driver for you and set it up. Certainly give it a test run. If things don't work right, go to the manufacturer and download if they have a Linux driver. And again, I can't speak for every printer out there. This is one of the reasons I use Brother products, because they not only work, but they have Linux drivers. Okay, I'm going to use Alt and F4. And now, hopefully you found this information informative. Take care.